Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins. It's August 17, 2026. I still feel like saying, and we're still here, because there was some maybe doubt. And so we'll see how that goes. Today, I am hosting Bernhard Guenther, the creator of Veil of Reality. We're actually going to talk about that name. He is backstage. I'm super excited to get started with our chat, but I'm going to introduce him first. A quick announcement that I am going to be away so this week there will be no Beth of Fresh Air episode, so you can pick it up again the coming week. There was, we did a really amazing episode, if you didn't get a chance to watch it, called Reddit, and it's all about the archetype of red. I never actually thought about doing the archetype of colors. It wasn't a fascination of mine, and how it came about, you can hear all about that. It was quite dynamic and kind of wild, actually. And hello to Jack Delot. Nice to see you. Glad you could make it. Share this out for me, please. I am not exactly favored in this interweb world with algorithms. And so I'll just quickly introduce Guenther. I have been a fan of his for many years, I think since about 2015-ish, when I began to myself go down rabbit holes and noticed how dark the world was. And I was tuned into some people who had, a really black, dark view of the world. And it's not untrue. They weren't saying untrue things. It just would leave me feeling like, oh my goodness, I have just been attacked by a vampire and I'm nearly dead on the floor and don't know what to do with all of this. So when I came across Bernhard's work, I was very refreshed, because he's not in denial about all that stuff, but he knows where it's going and what to do with it and how to actually search out solutions, not how to manage the world out there, but how to effectively do what he calls the psycho-spiritual work. He considers himself in that arena a researcher, a teacher, and a guide whose work explores the deeper architecture of reality. I love this. I actually use the word architecture a lot these days. And the evolutionary changes humanity faces during this time of transition. We're actually going to talk about a recent article of his under the same title, and that was super enlightening. So drawing on work over 2 decades of study, practice, and inner work, he integrates esoteric wisdom, depth psychology, trauma healing, shadow integration, and a clear understanding of the spiritual and hyperdimensional forces that influence human consciousness. He's the founder of Piercing the Veil of Reality, co-host of the Cosmic Matrix podcast with his wife, Laura. And through online courses, mentoring, articles, podcasts, and retreats, he helps sincere seekers to cultivate discernment, embody their true nature, and align with the deeper purpose of in a time of profound change. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on and we're going to get started. Welcome, Bernhard. I want to call you Guenther.
Many do. I have 2 double forenames. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Great to be back.
You're welcome. How long has it been? I should have gone and looked back. Was it?
Maybe, definitely a few years, 3 or 4 years, something like that.
Yeah.
It was during the pandemic craziness, I think.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's been fun to follow you and your evolution. I'm not sure if, maybe that's a question to get into sooner than later, but is there anything more by way of introduction that you'd like to say?
No, it's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay. So how have things changed for you since the pandemic, since 2020? What kind of evolution have you noticed in your life and in your work?
Great question. It's interesting because in my work, as you maybe know, for the past, since the even late 90s, early 2000s, is all about conspiracy, this and that, and talked about a lot of the things people are now starting to talk about. And that's fine. That's great. More people are becoming aware of all that. So for me personally, even when the quote unquote pandemic happened, it was no surprise to me in that sense, from a bigger picture perspective, what's behind it, especially from a spiritual perspective, not just as you know, the 3D matrix, as I call it. But interestingly, we recently had eclipse, right? We're in the middle of 2 eclipses. And my wife, Laura, she's an evolutionary astrologer. And I'm hosting right now a course with a group called Mastering Spiritual Warfare, going deep into psycho-spiritual work and the unseen forces and how to navigate these times. But we did a meditation around the eclipse. The eclipse this solar eclipse was in Leo, right? So it's kind of about letting go of old identities, so to speak. And as Laura was guiding through the meditation, what came for me, what costume would you like to let go of? What would you want to change? And I see myself letting go of more and more of the conspiracy guy. I'm letting myself more and more go of just conspiracies, like not to deny them, right? Not to like, oh, I'm better than anything, but I just see that this, for me, becomes more and more like focusing in the shadows on the wall, like Plato's allegory of the cave, right? For me, it's been, as you know, my work always combining both the inner and outer work, being aware of the deception, manipulation out there, but also the inner work. But I'm drawn more and more into not inner work in the context of just escaping the world, but I realize on a deep embodied, on my own inside, that we need to embody a new frequency, a new level of being, to align with the new cycle, and not trying to hold on to the old world and get out of this, from my perspective, almost childish understanding of trying to get rid of evil externally, as if at some point the truth will be fully exposed and all the evildoers, pedophiles will be arrested, we get rid of them, and then we're in the golden age. This is just not going to happen. So I'm just kind of, especially now, there's a social media and this illusion, everybody's a conspiracy, this and that. And I think what really hit me was exactly at the last eclipse, that's when Charlie Kirk got assassinated. And you right in between this. And so this is the same theme. And you had interesting this discussion with Candace Owen or whatever, all this stuff going on there, right? The debate. So that's coming reoccurring. But ever since the Charlie Kirk, and you can question the whole official story all along, but I started to become tired with this conspiracy stuff. Like it's wasting my time and energy, especially on online. What's going to, I can post my opinion. What is it really going to do to change and help people other than getting some dopamine hit of having an opinion? So what I see myself changing, getting, in a nutshell, letting go of this whole externalizing conspiracy world that is out there, right? Which in myself, seeing for myself, could become more in the distraction, and also mistaking just an informational awareness with a true quote unquote awakening, right? Just an intellectual awareness of the manipulation out there has its place, but I see it more as a transitional phase. And I see, unfortunately, many people in the so-called truth movement maybe just getting stuck there, right? Instead of like, hold on, there's a deeper reality, there's a deeper purpose to all of that, there's a deeper evolutionary impulse. We need to align ourselves, or for the ones who are called in this so-called time of transition. So that's what I'm drawn more to, right? So see everything more in a bigger context in the evolution of consciousness, where everything has its place and there's actually nothing quote unquote wrong with reality, but everything has a teaching function, right? So that's kind of where I'm at right now in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Yeah. I've had a similar trajectory at when the pandemic hit, I was more immersed in my work. I felt like I was hitting a stride in my work. I'd finally, got to a place where it wasn't so difficult anymore, I had more of an audience, if you can call it, established. And then when the world went kerflooey, I went like right into that. I was prepared for it thanks to the work of you and some other podcasters. Shout out to Freeman, for example, and others that you could see exactly what was happening. There was very little illusion that there was a real boogeyman virus going on out there and all that kind of thing. But the depth of the injustice sent me into this rebel mode.
Yeah.
And I wanted to fight, and I got angry, and I podcasted, a crazy number of times, desperately looking for solutions externally. And the whole thing, of course, comes full circle. I never abandoned my work in the process, but it comes full circle to exactly the same conclusion that you've made. And it's so easy to get stuck in the identity. You said this is like letting go of old identities as a conspiracy guy, for example. And that is the stuck place, because when people think they have the idea that they're seeking truth, when really they're just seeking the lies in external sources, they're not finding truth. There's a certain goodness to come out of some illusions, and know that a poison injection is not good for your health. Like those are some good things.
Yeah.
But, what I've realized for myself is that the scale of deception is actually much greater within us than it is out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. As Gurdjieff would say, I've been deep into Gurdjieff's work back in the early 2000s. He has definitely played a big part. And he always pointed out something in esoteric truth, which also talking all the truth traditions, it's very easy to see the lies out there in the world, obvious manipulation. It's much harder to face the lies you're telling yourself, much harder. And that's what I see, what most people, especially also in people who are more inclined, what I mean by truth movement nowadays is just people just very only externally oriented on social media, trying to expose psyops and everything, right? And what I've noticed, especially since the pandemic, it triggered in many people awakening, not like you and me and others, but for many others, like, oh my shit, we're being lied to. So they have finally taken the quote unquote red pill. But I've seen something change because of the rise of social media and short form content. There's a lack of discernment and there's more paranoia. And I can understand that even from a psychological perspective. You realize, oh my God, we're being lied to. Then all of a sudden you don't trust life anymore at all. You don't trust anyone. You fall into very oversimplified black and white thinking. And you see psyops everywhere. I've never seen so many people psyops this and that and assumptions, seeing psyops where there are not even psyops, and everything is a conspiracy and this is fake and all of that, right? And it's a simulation, like complete, like extreme, almost like victim blame trap. Like everybody is doing something to us, right? We have no control. You give almost the controllers more power in this way, but there's a lack of inner understanding your own inner, even from a basic Jungian perspective, shadow work, understanding your shadow, understanding inner child wounds and all of that, how they can overlay, can model or affect your perception of the world. Because there's truth in the saying, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Yeah. So if you don't aware of your, even on the basic childhood wounding, when inner child part takes over, unconscious core beliefs, your unshadow, your negative shadow projections, you cannot accurately perceive the lies out there either, right? So from the esoteric perspective, even if Gurdjieff say, if you're not able to separate truth from lies within yourself, which is much harder because of the blind spots, the defense mechanisms, psychological defense mechanisms, you're not able to accurately perceive the truth out there. So it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And there, from a spiritual perspective, that goes deep into my work, from a hyperdimensional perspective, there are other forces. They manipulate that. They easily manipulate even truth seekers and conspiracy people who are just locked into the 3D thing and just project the hate and disgust and anger on there, which just creates a certain frequency which other forces feed upon, but they keep you kind of enclosed in this frequency prison. So for me, the matrix, so to speak, is not out there, but it's within us, working through us. So the only way out is in and through. So, so I have my own disillusionment going through with everything that's been going on. And I've been there too myself, projecting my own stuff. I can see even back in my activism days, right? I was an activist. I was fully into anti-Zionism already 10, 15 years ago, before it became popular, so to speak. Now everybody's, painting my face with the Palestinian flag and all of this, right? But I saw how my activism was also informed by all my own inner wounding, unconscious stuff, and just not being happy within myself. Somebody needed to pay, right? Getting this oversimplified black and white thinking and victim and perpetrator and all of this. So for me, all of this becomes more subtle, right? And when I talk about inner work or facing yourself, doesn't mean non-action, doesn't mean avoiding the outer work, but it means engaging more into conscious action. So you not inadvertently become that what you fight against. I've seen this a lot of people when they give into the anger and the rage, and you become frustrated and black-pilled and very nasty because your own stuff is taking you over. But it means more conscious action to align something with who we truly are. And have an understanding, that's where deeper, even depth psychology comes in, then we cannot get rid of evil externally, right? It is by, as Carl Jung famously said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious within ourselves. The more we can confront our own darkness, our own potential for evil, which is not easy work. Shadow work in itself has become very corrupted, right? The more we actually not only come in a high alignment within ourselves, our full creative potential, our uniqueness, our purpose for being here. Everybody has something unique to them. But that's also how you help the world and mitigate evil and mitigate the darkness, right? Which also has a teaching function in this dark age we're in right now. But it's not going to be resolved by trying to escape the matrix externally. I'm going to go find some property in, I don't know, Costa Rica. Everybody's trying to escape it externally, right? But you cannot run away from yourself, right? That's really what it comes down to. And not trying to fight the boogeyman out there. Just everybody has their favorite boogeyman, right? Be the Illuminati, the Zionists, the bankers, Fauci, whatever, I don't care. Doesn't mean not to hold people accountable and all of that, but how much time do you waste really put into trying to quote unquote expose, something online? Like, that's what I realized, again, to the point of what do we think is going to happen? Do people seriously believe that Fauci will be arrested in the end? I have that myself, this very wishful thinking, right? With the Epstein list and all of it, finally everybody will be rounded up, the evildoers, and then Justice Department feels so satisfied about all of that. But this is not how reality works. This is not how God works or divine creation, all of that. Is even in my course, which I'm teaching right now, Mastering Spiritual Warfare, most people, including myself in the past, have a very false understanding of evil, of what it actually is and entails, and that it's nothing separate. It's nothing, even nothing opposing of God, so to speak. It cannot exist on its own. So we are in the dark age of materialism, and what is I see missing, and I've been missing myself, a more deeper spiritual understanding, a spiritual connection, a psychological understanding of ourselves, to really know yourself in the context of what's going on in the world, meaning in the context of evolution of consciousness, because we have no framework, right? We have no understanding of why the world is the way it is and what's the whole point of it and purpose, right? Which all these ancient traditions, esoteric traditions, really good core spiritual teachings were informing us with. Even in the past, we were more connected to the spiritual world, but we have kind of lost that, which is also almost, quote unquote, you could say by design. Then you have this materialism coming in, and the religion of transhumanism, which we're facing now, which is the ultimate materialistic utopian dream, so to speak. And what I see happening now is almost a splitting of humanity between like a spiritual awakening, a spiritual, quote unquote, ascension to something more real and good and uplifting, but also a materialistic entrapment, which we're seeing now happening as well with transhumanism, AI. And I'm not black and white about it. I'm not like anti-technology, anti-AI. It's just what consciousness is using it. How are you still using it, or you become dependent on it, or giving away your power and all of this. So that's why I see a splitting. And this is a natural splitting. You can see it in all the various esoteric traditions. That is not man-made. It's not based on polarization. It's not based on man-made beliefs like left versus right and that kind of splitting, It's also not based on informational knowledge, right? It's not about I'm more aware of these conspiracies and these people are not aware of those conspiracies, hence I'm awake, those are asleep. That's not true. I've worked with so many people. I've seen people who are more spiritually embodied and emotionally embodied who may not be aware of all the quote-unquote conspiracies going on. And I've seen many people who maybe have a mental understanding of what they think, how the world is running of all the conspiracy and psyops, but they're not very emotionally intelligent. They're spiritually disconnected, not embodied at all, and also hence manipulated by forces they're not fully aware of. So the splitting I see more happening is based on levels of consciousness. And once you go deeper, and you can maybe relate to that, in this inner work, there's a choice to be made. Right? There's a choice what we align ourselves with it. And if you're more sincere in the inner work, there's a natural calling from within your soul being to align with something higher, to give yourself. There's something opens up, right? And you realize the old ways just don't work anymore. We need to bring in a new consciousness. And I'm not talking about this in the context of some new age stuff of just, you know what I mean? Which it has it distorted, oversimplified. This whole new humanity wants to be born. Because we cannot skip steps. We still need to face the darkness, be it in the world and within ourselves, but use it as a ferment for transformation, to burn in the alchemical fire within, to embody a new consciousness. So I feel that's where humanity is leading at. And I don't see a collective awakening happening anytime soon. I think that this is just not natural, not meant to be with 7, 8 billion people, different levels of consciousness. You need to respect free will. Doesn't mean one are better or worse. We all were where other people were, right? Like we all were, as quote unquote, asleep sometimes to the media propaganda, and then you wake up and there's different levels. So again, there's a more widening that I'm experiencing, a different perception I have of myself and the world, and a different approach.
Fantastic, beautiful answer. I think you covered my whole list actually of questions in there. Yeah, but we'll go deeper into some of that. It's hilarious. Like literally, yeah, we're on a lot of the same pages. I'll just say hello to some of the people who've come in the chat. So Allie McBeal's in the house, and M. Pluie, welcome. Nice to have you. Quietly Content Bear. Lewis is here. And yes, everything could be an opportunity for the work. That's exactly what it comes down to. That's why I was going to ask you, maybe this is a good time for it. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I'll still ask now anyway, in terms of, the darker things get, say, even in our eclipse season, right? It's a season of sudden change, surprise, turn inside out. How can we make that work for us? Because it seemed to be just a force against.
Well, from when you look into the more traditional esoteric teachings, especially Gurdjieff and many others, they said the most difficult circumstances are the best circumstances for the work.
Right.
So to speak. It's, right. It's easy. I'm sure I've been in retreats in Peru and Costa Rica, and on yoga retreat, and you go to an ashram, whatever, you're closed off from the world. Oh, it's very easy to meditate and like having all these realizations, and you feel like on cloud 9 or whatever, it's going to feel amazing. Like, oh, I'm so enlightened. But then you go back to your everyday life in the everyday matrix, boom, that's where the work is necessary. Even Sri Aurobindo talked, it's easy to become quote unquote enlightened or more embodied spiritually in an ashram, but bring this consciousness into Times Square in New York. He literally mentioned that, for example, So what does it mean? It means that we are confronted with our own inner shadow parts, inner friction when things don't go as we like them to go in difficult situations. Now, I'm not implying that you should be sadistic and just expose yourself to the biggest suffering and pain and whatever. That's a distortion of it. But it means about not trying to escape life, but use life as a teaching. Like that was big of Gurdjieff, his fourth way teaching. Fourth way mean to do the work in everyday life. Same with Sri Aurobindo, integral yoga, all life is yoga. You bring it into your life. Jungian shadow work, you do it in everyday life. Whatever triggers you, whatever you don't like, dislike, without right away externalizing, without right away identifying with the thought, the emotion, or I like this, I don't dislike this, very mechanically, and then always blaming somebody else for your state of affairs, turn it inwardly, right? And like that's sitting with that friction, holding the tension of opposites. This is a very deep psycho-spiritual, alchemical inner process that is not easy. And you will see the more you're sincere in this process, you will at one point face the true, what Gurdjieff called the terror of the situation. Which is not just for the conspiracy theorist who is only externally oriented. We also see the terror of the situation. Oh my God, we're being lied to, deception everywhere, from birth. This is, you can get into that. Yeah, but the true terror of the situation is realizing, and anybody who's sincere in the inner work will realize is your own mechanical nature, that you have no free will, that you're running on programs, not just media, social, culture program, but all your childhood wounds, your inner child, and you mistake all kinds of different sub-personalities within yourself for your true self. You don't even know yourself at all. What you maybe know is like a little bit about your likes and dislikes, your preferences, this and that, your tastes, you know what I mean? What you like, music, film-wise, that's what general people understand under who I am. But this is the very conditioned surface personality. When you go deeper, right, that's when the real work begins. And then you can use life every day, you know what I mean? Use any friction, any trigger, instead of like blaming the other person, like, why is it evoking such a response within you? What is it within me, what I don't dislike in this other person, right? I mean, hypothetically, if the political left and political right would sincerely engage in shadow work instead of projecting on each other what they do, their own shadows, or even a lot of truthers, instead of projecting everything onto the boogeyman, engage in shadow work, everybody, we would be already an enlightened civilization, integrated the shadow and really have a party with the aliens somewhere, right? But this is not going to happen. Even not everybody is capable of shadow work, number one. It creates already a certain level of consciousness and inner alignment. Even Carl Jung said about that maybe only 10, 15% of humanity are able to really engage in shadow work because it's very confrontational. You will need to face things within yourself you don't like to see, which you usually always deny and project on others. But we can do, that's why it's very fervent. I think I have said this before, I'm extremely grateful to be alive in this day and age. I think from a true self perspective, I truly chose to be here, right? I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. These are magnificent times, challenging times, dark times, but very huge opportunity, because the more darkness comes up, the more we can transmute it. And actually, like from a level of, from an evolutionary perspective, the more light tries to anchor itself onto the earth, as Sri Aurobindo called the supramental divine consciousness, kind of like trying to descend, the more you will understand it, even in the spiritual process, the more you connect to your true self, bring light in, that light will shine light into the darkest corner. It will bring out the darkness and evil.
Right.
This is actually part of the evolution of consciousness. So this is a good thing that's happening, right? It's exposing what needs to be exposed. Even like you can say with Epstein files. I'm like, if you would have told me when I was already writing about elite pedophilia 20 years ago, before even social media and all of this, you would tell me at some point they would like release like government officials, even if it didn't go all the way, I would still have never believed you. This is insane. So this also shows there's actually a positive part, but we have to get out of this childish thinking that there will be just people arrested and then we're done and over with, because it still depends on our own level of consciousness. And Laura and I talked about this. Let's say that, take the Epstein files, for example. One of the reasons not everything is coming up and being exposed to a sense, because it couldn't, because everything is one. It also corresponds to the masses and our levels of consciousness and what we are actually able to see, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I don't think we're on a level of consciousness where everything can be simply exposed, right? There's so much dark and evil out there, but people haven't even faced their own potential for evil, their own darkness. But the more we do this work within, the more we can face what's out there, the more we transmute this darkness, the more we bring the shadow to light, and that's how we help the world, right? So we can do this work in every day, but we need to have an understanding. Like Gurdjieff would say, if you want to do self-work, this inner work, first you need to study what inner work is, right? And I see a lot of people, for example, when they talk about inner work or shadow work, people make a lot of assumptions, conception. Oh, should I just do inner work and not do any action? Like anybody who says that has never truly engaged in inner work, because if you truly engage in inner work, it confronts you more with life, right? It's not an escape, because once you sincerely do the inner work, you need to take a level of responsibility that not everybody can handle, because we always like to blame something or someone, right? So it forces you to engage more in life, more consciously, without blame victim consciousness, to really be present with everything and not escape at all. So, most often I see the other way. Sometimes I see this online trying to expose the truth is seeking conspiracy, and escape from your own inner world, from your own inner suffering, from your own inner childhood, from your guilt, from your shame, from your sadness, from your own inner happiness, right? So someone else needs to be blamed for that. So again, I think we are in a very amazing time, and the potential for awakening has never been greater. I think this is a huge potential opportunity. But it can be both, just as there's a big opportunity, but then there's also at the same time more manipulation, more distraction and deception at the same time. Right? The dark and light is both increasing at the same time. But I think we're living in amazing times. So that's the way I see it. I'm very grateful to be here.
Amazing. So great, right? You're a rare soul. So I appreciate your perspective so much. let's see where to. Yeah, the terror of the situation. I was reading The Fourth Way this weekend, and chapter 10, where Ouspensky is reporting what Gurdjieff was saying, that you cannot do.
Yes.
And when I first heard it, because I have some training and been through the, like, say, non-doership from a Vedic perspective, and understanding that it's the life doing through you. It's not who it's not the identity of who you think you are that's actually doing. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I get that. But as I go deeper into it, I've been seeing, it's really what you were saying, how when you start to realize how the vast majority of every single action and word in your life is mechanical,
Yeah.
right? It's being done unconsciously. You're not doing. It's
Yes.
really not the case. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, it's very profound. So this is from In Search of the Miraculous, which is a great book for anybody who wants to do Gurdjieff's work. It's based on Ouspensky wrote it, one of his students, but he really summarizes Gurdjieff's work really well. So in this particular passage, Gurdjieff says, you cannot do, you're very naive. And as you know, Gurdjieff is very direct, right? It's not, not nowadays you have this almost pampering, like safe space type of pop spiritual, like, oh, sorry to trigger, don't hurt your feeling, be more compassionate. No. The tricks, the esoteric teachers from the past, they're very confrontational. Like, you're lying to yourself, right? You cannot do, right? You're very naive. You avoid all kinds of issues within yourself, and very brutal sometimes in a sense. So what he's saying basically, when he says you cannot do, meaning there's no conscious action in whatever you do. And that's the number one realization. That's why any awakening, any inner work must entail disillusionment. There's no awakening without disillusionment. Doesn't have, you see in any other paths talk about is disillusionment, the death. That's also the meaning almost of the from a Christian perspective, the second birth, so to speak, the death and rebirth, right? So something within you needs to die, disillusionment. And that's facing with yourself all the lies you've been telling yourself, all the justification, all the mechanical nature, which, as Gurdjieff said, can be like a shock. So shocks are necessary in the awakening process, right? Sometimes we have shocks can happen even in our personal life. So an accident, an illness, a death of a loved one, right? That can work as a trigger, as a shock for a deeper awakening. We had a global shock, the pandemic, right? You can see that it put some people, the shock put them more into trauma, dissociation, and more like fear. But as we know, from a positive sense, it woke a lot of people up. It was a positive shock, right? It kind of it made people question more reality. It made, even from a health perspective, it made people question more conventional mainstream medicine, which is great, right? So all of it made people question the school educational system through a shock. But there are also shocks within ourselves. Many times in my own, as you know, in this process, there are many dark nights of the soul. Sometimes you go down into the gritty part, and there's a lot of just disillusionment, right? Even with how your dreams and hopes, even what you thought you wanted, right? But then you go, God maybe has something else in store for you, right? Which is not necessarily aligned with what your ego thinks at once. I had definitely many of those. There's a German saying that translates loosely into tell God your plans and he will laugh at you, right? Not that he's making fun of you, but you're not really in control. That's the ultimate disillusionment, that the ego you think is in control is actually not in control. That you actually come deeper, you're a transducer of all kinds of forces beyond your own inner stuff, sub-personalities, wounded parts, that take over the mechanical nature, the unconscious stuff. And then we go more into the spiritual realm, the other forces and beings that also manipulate you, guide you. But from a positive sense, even divine beings, but also manipulative beings that kind of can trick you and guide you and affect your actions, thoughts, and beliefs while you think it's you doing it. So that's really, what Gurdjieff was hinting at, that we are living under the illusion of free will as long as we are not engaged in the deeper work to bring forth your true self, the real I, as he calls it.
That's amazing. Yeah, that illusion of free will. I host the House of Free Will. It's a very high value of mine, free will. but the disillusionment from that place of, say, oh, like we all have free will. And that's true theoretically or in potential, but not practically.
Yeah, it's relative. Like Sri Aurobindo would have, free will is relative real, right? So it's kind of like, it's very paradoxical, right? But to believe of ultimate free will is an illusion of the ego. That's even like, you have the statist and anti-statist anarchist, for example, right? That, if you go into the anarchist or even natural law, this is my own little critique sometimes, the illusion of independence. I'm just going to extract myself from the government, have my own anarchistic community, volunteerism, and all of this. But if there's no inner work, that can disintegrate very easily as well. And there's this illusion of independence. There's no such thing as you want to be independent. You want to be your own authority, right?
Yeah.
And I can understand it's a stage, right? We don't want anybody else to tell us what to do, coercion and all of this, the government, absolutely. But if you go deep in the work, you realize that you're just an instrument for many other forces. And ultimately, in the spiritual path, you want to align yourself with divine will. That's a true freedom, but it's still not your will, right? And the divine is nothing separate from us. It's just this ego lives under the illusion of separation. That's the ultimate, you know what I mean? That's why we cannot become free by trying to become more even separate from everything else or independent, so to speak, right? It has its place, but everything is interrelated. Nothing can exist outside of God. There's no mistake in creation either. So everything is connected, interrelated, and most importantly, as within, so without, our inner life, our unconscious is also related to the outside world. So the futility of trying to change the outside, why not change it within ourselves? We change the outside through the inner purification, right? I mean, David Hawkins, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, very profound man.
Yeah.
Has done incredible work, kind of created this map of consciousness through very complex process research of calibration over decades. I mean, people who don't know his work, I can recommend Power versus Force or Truth versus Falsehood.
Yeah, I think I have the book right here.
Excellent. Yeah, I can really recommend it.
That's it.
He said with different levels of consciousness, that somebody really embodied on higher levels of consciousness, which you need to get out of victim blame consciousness and really engage more in the inner work, you have more powerful positive effect on the world and balance out the negativity and ignorance of millions of people who are just stuck in victim blame consciousness and externalize everything onto the world. And according to his teaching, his map of consciousness, about 85% are below this threshold, as you know, 200, stuck in victim blame consciousness. And you see a lot of actually truth type people as well. As always, somebody needs to be blamed and caught in this illusory thing that I am separated. I'm the good guy, the evil people are out there, right? And the inner work, especially shadow work, will come to this shock movement, realization that there's this evil within yourself as well. The potential, at the very least, that there's the seed for evil in many different ways, right? That already comes in, that we're part of it, that ties into the work of Paul Levy, Wetiko. I'm sure maybe you've heard of it, that we all kind of easily influenced by that, right? So that's what he's talking about. You cannot do in your mechanical nature. You have to first realize the mechanical nature. Even that's another great teaching, my Gurdjieff. Before trying to change or heal anything, just observe yourself, which is easier said than done, to establish the observer, the witness, and really sincerely observe yourself, your thoughts and emotion, how you automatically identify with everything and mechanically act and react, right? Without conscious awareness, without free will behind it. So there's no conscious doing, actually. And that's what he meant then with facing that within yourself.
Yeah, great answer. I love that. One of the more enlightening aspects of that work has been for me the food diagram, and what I call a food chain. I know that it doesn't. They don't call it that in that world, and how everybody is, doing one of four things. They're preparing to eat, or they're eating, or they're preparing to be eaten, or being eaten. Mm-hmm. in that chain. And for some people, that's terrifying. I think it is part of the terror to awaken from it. But I think there's megalomaniac side to humanity where we think we're the top of the food chain. That couldn't be further from the truth. And would you want to talk on that a little bit? How you've integrated that? It's really changed everything for me. It's beautifully humbling to just see myself in. I'm not in control. I'm not the sovereign being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mean by that humanity is not on top of the food chain? That kind of thing. Getting
Right.
into?
Yeah. You intimated that.
Yeah.
We feed on beings.
Yeah.
To
Exactly.
sustain
I mean,
ourselves.
life feeds on life in a sense, right? And I'm not want to get into like, carnivore versus vegetarianism and like, just eat plant. Everything has consciousness. I don't care, right?
Yeah.
Plants do not like to be eaten either. You can make that argument.
Plants have a war on us, actually.
The elemental beings, nature spirits, and all that. But everything has its part. Everything is in nature, right? But we're not top of the food chain. There are other beings, in other realms, in other planes of creation that feed on humanity, and not, I don't mean in a physical sense, and that's known through all the esoteric traditions, East and West, even from Gnosticism to the Veda teachings to Sufism to Vetiko to Gurdjieff food for the moon concept, right? The predator from Castaneda. Every different teaching talks about that we're not on top of the food chain. What food am I talking about? It certain frequencies, certain type of consciousness. What Robert Monroe referred to luge. So when you have a very strong negative feeling towards somebody, for example, it doesn't matter if you express it verbally or just in your thoughts, but there's an emotional charge of just anger, hate, disgust that creates a certain frequency with other beings, archonic type of entities, demonic entities. Sri Aurobindo called them your cold hostile forces, feed upon it. This sustains them. It gives it like nourishment. Just like us, a good steak or a good salad, whatever nourishes you. So that's what they're after, that type of frequency. Any from the lower realm, lower emotions, sexual perversions, even lust, all of that, right? We all have on a daily basis, right? Because none of us are enlightened. Most of us, we suppress them. I mean, I go deep into this whole concept as well in Mastering Spiritual Warfare, how these entities even feed off suppressed feelings and repressed emotions stuck in the body. So the way out is not forcing yourself to think positive thoughts or emotions.
Right.
That's the New Age cop-out that actually creates more of a shadow, gives these entities more power. You have to do the inner work. You have to ironically actually get into the depth of your shadow and deal with this suppressed emotions and process them consciously. When you process them consciously, it's not luge. But if we mechanically project them externally onto others, the world, that's what sustains them. That's from this hyperdimensional perspective, these forces, they love for people to polarize, left versus right, truthers versus sleeping people. They want you to project your hate onto Fauci or whatever, Illuminati, the bank that's Trump, right? Or AOC, I don't care, right? Like, bring more this luge, this disgust, right? It feeds these forces. It keeps us imprisoned in the frequency present, right? It's very important to understand. That's where it goes deep into the occult mechanics of the matrix. That's really the true architects of the matrix up there, so to speak. But we sustain them through our unconscious mechanical nature and projections. That's why one of the most important works you can do in this age is shadow work. I really feel Carl Jung is an avatar, sent by the divine, who brought an exceptional, amazing teaching, perfect for the Western man and woman, depth psychology that kind of is the bridge to more deeper spirituality, to deal with this darkness and shadow and negativity in a conscious way, to transmute it, transform it. So it's very important to do that, right? Because you see it all in the films. A great example, I use it a lot, is Star Wars. I'm sure you have seen Star Wars, the original ones, right? Great. We grew up on that. So the first one, the Return of the Jedi, right? And there's the scene of the Emperor in the chair, and there's Darth Vader there and Luke Skywalker, right? And Luke, the Emperor wants Luke to get into his anger and hate. It wants him to strike down, right? And it's like, just give in to your anger, strike me down. You know what I mean? Like, this is a great, deep, esoteric concept. The more you give into that frequency and project it on somebody, hate and anger, that's what feeds evil. That's how you become that what you fight against. It's a great esoteric insight. And I see this unfortunately happening a lot, even with very well-meaning people. For example, I wrote an article about it. What's also, interesting to point out in this context, I think, last year, a couple of years ago, Jacob Rothschild died, and then also Henry Kissinger died. You know what I mean? And those two are considered very quote unquote evil people in the truth. And then I saw on social media, everybody raving, happy that they're dead and death, you know what I mean? And good riddance and all of this. And this is a very fascinating to observe, because that's almost like a trap of agreement. This creates a frequency which exactly these occult forces want. To be joyful at somebody's death.
Yes.
It's very evil.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter what the person has done, right? It reminds me, similar to, we can maybe agree that Hillary Clinton has psychopathic qualities, right? Good example of a female psychopath. And I remember many years ago when they invaded Iraq and Gaddafi got killed, right? And there's this famous scene when she was interviewed by CNN or something, and she's like, we came, we saw, he died, and then she burst out into laughter. You know what I mean? That kind of frequency is the same frequency. If you're joyful, even if Fauci would die, right? It doesn't matter. If you're joyful at anybody who has committed a crime, murder, even a pedophile, and you take joy in this person dying, being killed, or get the death penalty, you feed the entity. You become that. You feed evil more and more. Doesn't mean to hold people not accountable. Doesn't mean to get the new age and like, let's love and light and forgive everyone. That's not what I'm talking about, right? But what emotion are you projecting out of there? What you're giving, you have no. If anybody who did that is taking joy in an evil people dying has no understanding of evil and see how they are actually being manipulated by evil, and feed that what they think they fight against. So that's how the world becomes very subtle. That's where we need to embody the inner warrior, right? That's even from a samurai perspective, a true warrior. You don't fight from hate and anger. You see it. You can see it even in, let's say, contemporary example, UFC. All these mind games before these opponents, they're trying to get each other emotional. They're trying to get you angry and hate, because then you lose your composure. You will lose the fight. So it's important to watch our projections in that sense, right? So we don't become that what we fight against, not to produce that luge, because that's what they're truly after. That frequency. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I named a program Love Hate. And it's very similar to the likes, the dislikes, the attachment, the aversion. But the love hate is poignant, because so much of the spiritual community has been convinced that don't hate and only love, but not realizing it's a pendulum.
Yeah.
Right? So if you love Hillary Clinton or you hate Hillary Clinton, they don't care. They got you both ways.
Yes.
On the loosh.
Yeah.
Right. It's not love without an opposite, which does to me exist.
Yeah.
But this love hate, it just goes back and forth like couples. They love each other and then they hate each other and then they love each other.
It's based on projections too. The negative shadow projection. There's also the positive golden projection, where you project positive qualities in the person. You see there's a lot of celebrity worship, rock star, whatever. Project qualities the person might not even have. Your own unlived potential. And then we can also project our negative shadow onto others because we hate them, right? We're always caught in the hate, dislike, and like. And what you mentioned, I would even like true love on this higher level is actually not this emotional, like, just, do whatever you want. It's a high level of consciousness. So not this emotion that's based on a deeper understanding, right?
Yes.
And it does, and true love from this high level of consciousness also is able to make boundaries and say no. It's not just allowing everything either.
Yes, exactly. Love is not an emotion.
Yes.
Yeah, it's off the map of emotions. So that's very cool. Hello, Houndjog. Nice to see you, by the way. Sorry if I've missed anybody in the chat. Great to have you all here. This is so great. I'm just loving this conversation. Let's talk about reality, since you've got that right in the title of your URL, Veil of Reality. It's actually a shortening of a bigger expression. What is the full expression?
On my website, I called it Piercing the Veil of Reality.
Piercing the Veil.
Yeah. I came up with it. What happened, I remember early 2000s when there was Facebook, right? Before anything else. Sorry, that was MySpace. I was on MySpace. I was on MySpace, and that's when I started writing. I started writing because I was reading a lot. It was an outlet for me to organize my thought and maybe find like-minded people. So I wrote a lot on MySpace back then. And then my friend told me, like, why don't you create a blog? I didn't even know what a blog was back then, early 2000. It was just these free WordPress blogs came up. So I signed up, and then I had to find a title. I'm like, oh, and kind of like, I don't know. I read it somewhere in a book. I wish I can remember, about piercing the veil of reality. And that's kind of like, that's what I like to do, like to pierce the veil. Like there's more different layers in this reality, understand it. And then it, the name took a life on its own, and that describes my work really well, veil of reality, because there's different planes of creation, different type. What reality are we talking about? The physical reality, the spiritual reality, the emotional reality, the mental, there are different planes of creation. So I want to pierce through it, so to speak, right? So that's kind of where it came from. And I think in retrospect, it describes my work or my approach very well.
Yeah, it really does. So I'm a fan of reality, and there is a whole side to the spiritual world that's all about belief. In fact, I had a past colleague student reach out to me yesterday, and she asked some advice about health. So I came on kind of like a truck. I wasn't trying to couch it or anything, knowing that what I was going to say wasn't going to match her beliefs. I knew that in advance. And then she argued with me a little bit. It's like, well, you asked me. And then she ended it by saying, but health is 99% belief, right? She used a question mark. And it was just a resounding no. There's reality. Health is reality. Now, from many different centers, like you're saying. So it's not just biochemical. It's not just physical. It's not just, even at the physical, there's so many dimensions to it. And it's not just mental. It's not just emotional. It's not just spiritual. We're really called to all areas to develop in. Yeah. And this, so, I always tongue in cheek say, I'm a fan of reality. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean I've been able to give up all my beliefs because I haven't seen them all yet. It's, until you really bump up against a belief and go like, oh, I thought that was true, but it's not. I had a recent experience. I believed about myself, or I identified myself as someone who's more of a late night person, not a morning person. And so that's, my schedule has always been surrounded by that. And then I had a close colleague who's into the Gurdjieff work. Shout out to Micah Ellers, who I'd love for you guys to come on together sometime if there's ever time for that. You'd have an amazing conversation. And he kind of called me out. He's like, is that an identity? And then suddenly I felt the friction. And I wanted to argue for this. Oh, no, but my aunt was like that. And it's because of this and because of that. And I felt this like, and then it was like, I know by now, friction is a sign. So I immediately started to work against that friction. I think I'm 4-5 days now up. By 6, it was 5:30 this morning. Like, wow. I'm just for the work of it. Plus, it's going to make a flight later this week easier to get up for. And even though I'm kind of exhausted and my body's confused and everything like that, there's an energy that comes with this bringing of myself to a greater reality. First of all, of circadian rhythm and, so many things that work better. I'm sure you would agree with that. I have a feeling anyway, you'd agree with that. And then, so the indulgence in the belief system, do you see is there a positive to it? Is there a place for that? Is it a stage? Can you let all the beliefs go potentially?
Well, I think when you're sharing that, what first came to me, that when we talk about belief, we think about mostly our conscious beliefs, like the tip of the iceberg, which I don't think is driving most of what we do. Again, doing, right, from Gurdjieff. So I think a lot of unconscious beliefs we have, called even from a trauma perspective, core beliefs from the inner child that is driving us, which we're not aware of. There's many unconscious core beliefs in a negative way we all have to battle with. A very common one I've seen within myself and many people I've been working with is that I'm not good enough belief program, which runs very unconsciously, which keeps people like, don't want to be seen, keeps them very limited, right? Or I don't deserve love. You can override this as much as you want with positive. That's my issue with positive affirmations and sitting in front of the mirror. I'm like, I deserve love. Like these, and even NLP and all of it has its place, but it's still like surface symptom management until you dive deeper, right? And go to the core, to this, into the shadow, so to speak, and uncover that inner child, that exile that needs to be nurtured and be seen, so to speak, to tell it, no, you deserve love. You are good enough. And then it changes everything, right? So that's already differentiation, conscious versus unconscious beliefs. And then I think overall, there's many other things that override, even comes to health. I think there is a great health revolution happening nowadays. I think it's positive, even like my share of, biohacking, so to speak, you know what I mean? And even, I think even in peptides, there can be some benefits here and there. So everything is popping up left and right, you know what I mean? So take your health in your own charge, but it's still based more on a physical level, biological level. It's true, right? I mean, certain foods have certain effects, kind of thing, right? But then also don't underestimate your beliefs, right? You can become neurotic about health and like, oh my God, I had fries today with seed oil. Oh my God, I shouldn't. That's not healthy. If you eat something, when you travel, have airport food, eat it, enjoy it. Don't think too much about it. You'll be fine, right? So that's how you can work with your belief. Don't get neurotic about it. But I feel even then beyond that, there's karma as well. Certain things happen to people, be it death or even severe illness, that simply couldn't have been prevented by better beliefs or processing or better diet or food or exercises, but was part of a necessary soul lesson, which would be maybe clear from a higher perspective, but it's not too easy to see when we're very identified with this body and who we think we are, right? So I think it's very, again, relative. But I think you made a good point. On some level, we need to question our beliefs. I have certain beliefs, also sacred cows. I had to be questioned myself. So, by the way, I can relate to you. I've never been an early person, right? I like to get up more like 8, 9, 10, and something like that, and But my wife, ever since we have a dog, he has a tendency for a few years now to get me up at 6 a.m. I got to get up and out in this, go on a walk out in the sun. And now I love getting up at this time. Nice. It's awesome to be right out in the sun because there's the stillness of the morning, right? I can do I have time by myself, do my morning practice, read a little bit before I actually start the day, right? Back in the days, I would get up at 9, 10 and then go straight to the computer or something. And I like this approach better. So, and a lot of it is based on belief, right? So I definitely need to question our beliefs. But I think sometimes it's the process itself to change a belief it entails more than trying to consciously change it, if you know what I mean.
Right. Not just wrestling with the thoughts and the feelings around it. Yeah. But ultimately, like seeing it in the first place, like you said, it's just tip of the iceberg, the beliefs that we're aware of.
Yeah.
And it's the unconscious ones that have a great deal more power over us regardless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. That those are the exact names of programs, just to go back to the not good enough. It's exactly the name. There's a lot of different iterations of it, but when you boil it down to the signature vibration of that thing, that mechanism that's running, it is exactly this not good enough. And it also is a pendulum, right? So you get the not good enough, and people are convinced that they have to spend their whole life becoming good enough. And
well, that's a great example. That's actually how narcissists are being created. We are living in an epidemic of narcissism. And if it's narcissism, by the way, is a spectrum. It's not everybody's in narcissistic personality disorders. So people kind of abuse this word too, right? There's a spectrum. We all have our narcissistic tendencies, right? But narcissism has increased, and a true narcissist is deeply insecure inside because there's unconscious shame. There's unconscious, I'm not good enough, driving the need for attention, for overcompensation all the time, right? Exactly, trying to go this other extreme to counterbalance this unconscious, I'm not good enough belief.
Exactly. And people don't recognize that it's two sides of the same pendulum. You just go from not good enough to good enough and not good enough and back to good enough. We feel, there's this victory. I catch myself in it all the time. Oh, I'm good enough. I'm good enough. Finally, like this.
Yeah.
And but it's literally baked in.
Yeah.
Not good
And what
enough
does
is
it even
baked in.
mean to be good enough? Sometimes, just be, right?
Right. I know it's literally when the program's not running, you can see it was meaningless. There's
Yes.
it refers to nothing in
Yeah.
reality. Same with deservingness. It's all in
Yeah.
the same, baked in those same cakes. So yeah, that's
Exactly.
and then when you're off the pendulum, you get to get a picture of reality, a kind of sobriety, someone recently called it, that you see what reality is that's not coming through the lens of this program, whichever side it is, the megalomania or the down on yourself side, and you get to see what is and just be and respond according to what it is.
Yeah, and then you have a better understanding of, you don't get caught up too much in this play of duality. Then you can see, even look at the world, and no matter, you can see even this, that's what I realized in my inner process, going back to the question at the very beginning, what the changes I see within myself. It's less and less black and white. Everything becomes more nuanced. You know what I mean? So I can see, even like now, let's look at the political dance and delusion, right? Right versus left, and people sometimes dismiss it all, and then it's all two birds of the same bird and whatnot, you know what I mean? But beyond these identifications, beliefs, look, people who are identified with the left political spectrum, now I'm like, oh, I can see you have some good points there. That makes sense, right? That relate to truth. But some things not. Same with the right. I can see you have points, but some things I don't think, you know what I mean? So it's not this black and white when you're so identified with one side, like, we are right, you're wrong, right? So everything becomes more nuanced. So you don't start to see, you don't fall into what's called also psychological splitting. This is a big issue nowadays. So psychological splitting is when your psyche splits as a defense mechanism. And you can see this outwardly when people see people only as all good or all bad. But that doesn't exist in reality. No, absolute evil doesn't even exist, right? It's not a true duality. So nothing is absolute evil, right? Even Hitler, whatever, was good to his dogs. Or whatever evil person you may call, I'm sure had some side where it showed maybe not an evil side, so to speak. Same with every good person has a shadow, probably a skeleton in the closet somewhere, right? Even Gandhi had a huge shadow, sexual shadow, for example. So, and that within ourselves too, we need to acknowledge. So it becomes more nuanced, right? So, and that kind of helps to take the charge off when we kind of engage in the world, right? Not to be so rigid with our beliefs and ideas of people.
Exactly. And then people think you're boring because you don't have this strong polarized opinion about every situation, and you go into the nuance and you can see things from many different angles, and it's like, but you're just being wishy-washy and you don't take a stand. And
because what they mean is they want you to agree with them. So
right. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
See if you're either one of them or you're one against them.
Yeah, because that's a big one. And two, it's ambiguity, right? People need to have unconscious drive for certainty.
Yes.
I think when you mature more, you can more rest in the unknown. So sometimes I'll even say, you know what, I don't know. To not jump right away, even when something happens in the world. So many people on social media, oh, it's a psyop. So you don't even know what happened yet.
Yeah.
Sometimes resting in the unknown, right? Without the need to know.
Exactly. Yeah, I did a deep dive. I was preparing a talk for an Acapulco. I'm not exactly an anarchist, but was giving some talks there, and it was on the masculine, feminine, and that polarity, and the two qualities of certainty and uncertainty. I realize are those two archetypes. The masculine has the certainty, the feminine is the uncertain, and you can't have masculine without feminine. They literally don't exist without that. There's no two archetypes. I always call them one archetype, with just seeing different sides of it. And so again, it's baked in. If you're going to be certain, to be honest and to be with reality, you're going to have to acknowledge the uncertainty in the process. Just quickly, I'll say how do we face uncertainty, especially in the truth community, is, excuse my bad language, but we make shit up.
Good point. Exactly. Yes.
Right? When you don't know, you just start inventing.
Yeah. I mean, I could even give an example when people, it's very common nowadays, see, or being sprayed. They see the chemtrails, the chemtrails are spraying. And I'm seeing it more like, you have no evidence for that. You just point at something, you assume. And I'm not, in this case, deny the reality of geoengineering, but I've done enough research into it. There's also, especially nowadays, this time of transition, there are fluctuations in climate change or weather patterns that have nothing to do with geoengineering, has nothing to do with CO2 pollution, what we're the official, but cosmic changes, atmospheric changes, which then can also result in just harmless contrails, which are not necessarily chemtrails, right? So I'm just saying this, we are very overblown, making assumptions in this very oversimplified black and white thinking. And I'm not taking myself out of the equation. I've done this many times in the past and then had to eat humble cake many times too, to realize, okay, I was too certain and I was wrong. Right? And you're right, the drive for certainty, right, drives a lot of people. And then doubling down on it because it doesn't feel good to acknowledge to yourself or even others that you have been wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, so far and few between. That I have so much respect for people who are willing to say, okay, I thought it was this and it wasn't that, and now I'm going to work with this greater version of reality. Yeah. So yeah, that's really cool. I love that. So you started to talk about the cosmological kind of influences, the time. I just listened to you speak your article. See if I can grab that link for people. It's a wonderful listen or read. I'm assuming the actual article is linked in this YouTube.
Yeah.
And so you went deep into the transition that we're in cosmologically.
Yeah.
And have you put your cosmology together based on a lot of, it sounds like there's a lot of different influences, right? Because Gurdjieff has his own cosmology and Sri Aurobindo has their cosmology. Have you pieced it together from many sources and come to some agreement around it, or
so to speak, some agreement? I mean, that's kind of my work in general. I think, with my work, I'm not pretending to reinvent the wheel, meaning I don't have special knowledge for you to give or sell. Don't have codes I downloaded or found some secret only you know what I mean? I think many things have been said over and over again. There's a wealth of knowledge. I have my own experiences, which I then use certain teachings to verify with. And I think my gift is to connect the dots, so to speak, right? So when I see verify, this is what this cosmology or teaching is talking about, this one from this part of the world culture the same, or there's a connection, talk about the same thing. So they have a big aha moment, right? So with the different cosmologies, I've done the time of transition, which I use that word a lot, is literally from an esoteric Christian teaching, Moraviev's work, which is also loosely related to Gurdjieff's fourth way teaching from his trilogy Gnosis. Gnosis, simply knowledge, has nothing to do with Gnosticism. It's actually based on esoteric Christian teachings before the church corrupted it all, before the Bible got edited, corrupted, all of. I consider this more the core esoteric teachings of Christianity, not the exoteric teachings we have nowadays distorted in the mainstream and this whole other side of neo-Christian dogmatic revival that's happening. So the time of transition talked about that we are ending an age of the age of the Holy Son and entering the age of the Holy Spirit, right? And this phase we're in right now is a transitional phase. And according to the teachings, it presents an opportunity, but not a guarantee. So the opportunity, again, the shift of the ages also depends on us, how the outcome will be. And the key point is the emergence of what he called a spiritualized man, right? To align with divine will. But if there can also be a failure in the so-called time of transition resulting in what he called deluge of fire, purification by fire. There's purification by water, as symbolized in the flood. Noah's flood and all of that. And you can backtrack this with actual historical geological events thousands of years ago, right? So there's that teaching, this time of transition. I think that's why we're in right now, during this intense purification phase. And then I saw a similar correlation also in Sri Aurobindo's work, right? He talked about the descent of the supramental consciousness, the emergence of a spiritualized man, but also the need for inner purification. Otherwise, the mother being Sri Aurobindo's spiritual collaborator, said we might end in a dark night of civilization, a destruction, a cataclysm, if we don't again, heed the voice of the divine, align with divine will. So I see what's happening. That's why I feel what's happening in the world is just a process of a much larger cosmic process rather than anything humanity doing to us, right? Geoengineering or whatever. Whatever's happening with the weather and the climate, there's bigger changes behind that. And then recently I was always aware of the Yuga cycles, the Kali Yuga, and very fascinated about the great year. And over the years, I've looked into it, studied it here and there, but there's a lot of conflicting information, right? Some people claim we already passed the Kali Yuga, we're already in the Dvapara Yuga. Some people say the Kali Yuga lasts hundreds and thousands of years, and like a lot of contradictions, right? And recently I came across a book, actually Laura's astrology teacher recommended that book called The Yuga Shift by Bibo Mes Divra. Bibo Mes Divra, an Indian scholar and teacher, who I feel really has decoded the Yuga cycle to its original meaning. Really profound work. I know I'll make a big statement here, but for anybody, I highly recommend reading his book. We had him on our podcast a couple of times as well. One time, and I talked about this book in the podcast I wrote, and then in this article you're mentioning, or which you're narrating, I mentioned that as well, right? And he has really made a very good case that the Kali Yuga just ended this last year, so to speak, and we're entering this intensified ekpyrosis purification phase, which is not overnight, not even within our lifetimes, similar to what Muraviev said, and it goes in line with this time of transition, because he also talked in the Yuga cycle the potential of cometary cleansing that comes around every 3,000 years, deluge by fire, right? So we're entering that window now. And Bibo Mes Divra also correlates it not only to the ancient Vedic teachings and decoding the Yuga cycle again and going through the misconceptions, but also correlates it to other cultural world cycles. The Hopi Indians talking about the emergence of the fifth world, the Greek have their own concept, the Egyptians of the great year, and it all correlates in the same way. And like the Yuga brings down the Yuga cycle to approximately 25,800 years, which aligns with the precession of the equinoxes, right? So we are in the darkest age, and that understanding that cosmology or Yuga cycle, which is basically a map for the evolution of consciousness. So it gives you understanding of where we're at in an illusion of consciousness. And evolution, the biggest misconception people have, especially influenced by materialism, Darwinism, that is this linear road up. And even people in spirituality have this false perception that awakening is just this linear road up to more light and love and all of this. But if you really understand the esoteric traditions, Sri Aurobindo talked about this, many others, there's a law called law of ascent and descent, and there's a cycle. So in short, we can only rise up to high levels of consciousness as dark and deep are willing to go into the shadow, into the descent. So it's a widening on all levels, right? It's not this linear road up. And the Yuga cycle exemplifies this as well. So we are now at the end of a descent into the darkness of matter and unconsciousness that lasted 12,000 years, since the last golden age, very coincidentally around the time of Atlantis, right? Going through the different ages, and we are now in this dark age, but it has its purpose, its descent, right, to experience deep materialism. And now we're getting this purification phase to bring up to as Sri Aurobindo said, to free the spirit and matter within ourselves, to spiritualize ourselves. So that's what we're entering right now, this ekpyrosis phase, this transitional phase on the way up. But there's work to be done. It's not going to be, it's like a birth, right? It's painful, but it's beautiful at the same time. And the old needs to die or be transformed, so to speak. And we need to engage in this process as well, again, through the inner work, through alignment with Dharma. That's a big one. He talks about aligning with Dharma. What is Dharma? It's like the higher law, the divine law, and also your personal Dharma. Everybody has a personal Dharma. What your uniqueness would you bring here, but it's not to be mistaken with a specific action or career or like a purpose type of thing. It's more right action according to your nature, right? So, and you can align with this more naturally the more you engage in the inner working and heed the voice of the divine, meaning align with the divine will, your true soul being. But all these different cosmologies, the time of transition, the Yuga cycle, Sri Aurobindo, what I present in this article, point at this critical phase we're in right now. And the message is clear. It's an opportunity, not a possibility, right? So there's potential for immense cataclysm in the future, for complete destruction, right? Not only world wars and all of that, but ecological destruction, comet bombardments, all of that, what the Earth has experienced many times before. Similar to what Atlantis experienced, right? With the destruction, thinking of Atlantis, because it was out of alignment. What also symbolized by the biblical flood, Noah, right? This is also the divine pressing the reset button, so to speak, not as punishment or anything, but
do over.
To do over, so we learn the lessons ourselves until we get it right. So we can mitigate. So I don't believe in specific predictions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The future is not in stone, set in stone. So we can mitigate potential really destruction, a dark night of civilization, cataclysm, the more we come in alignment with Dharma, the more we do the inner work, right? So that's why, again, the more we can engage in this psycho-spiritual work, this deeper alignment and resulting conscious action, the more you not only help yourselves, your family, but the more you help the world, right? Same what David Hawkins said. And that has more profound effects than, again, trying to fight evil externally in all of this. But we're in a very critical phase right now during this time of transition. And I think would help to have a bigger understanding, because we are so removed, because we're in the Kali Yuga, the darkest age, the Iron Age. A lot of spiritual teaching have been distorted. We're the furthest removed from our divine nature, from the spiritual realities and from our spiritual nature. So that's why the work is even harder to do right now, because we have forgotten our true nature. But that's the way out, so to speak. This purification, right? The inner purification in order to avoid the bigger outer purification.
Nice. That's beautiful. Yeah, there's so much in there. The yugas, I studied that in India, and they said there was 800,000 years left on the Kali Yuga. So that was, I always, when people say, oh, we're just about into the golden age, I'm like, no, we're not like this. But I'd be interested to maybe connect with that author that you interviewed as well.
He's a great guy. Definitely, I recommend. Yeah.
Okay, I'll hit you up for a connection if you don't mind, or an introduction.
Yeah.
And the linearity that we perceive that really isn't there. I teach about it in terms of spirals, like that there's an ascending up in the spiral, there's a descending down. That's where you have a lot of choice to go up or down, I guess, the cosmology aside. And then I get on a soapbox about ascension. I call it ascension myth busting, as if we're here to ascend. That's what a lot of common spirituality says. Well, we just need to go higher and higher, raise our frequency, and then we'll be okay, or we'll save ourselves or save the world. And what I noticed is that ascension work really demands much more shadow work.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of misconception about what, especially in New Age, they call ascension. Yeah. Which more often, like you said, it's almost seen as an escape.
That's it. Exactly. And I used it that way, right? That's how I almost died of cancer. I was escaping out of the friction in my own being. I abandoned it. I didn't have any consciousness with that. But I'm all high up in the realms. And then this massive shock, like you were talking about, came and stopped the show, and it was over for me for 3 years. I had to reflect on all of that. Maybe not survive, which I did, of course, you can see. And Gurdjieff talks about Atlantis. I'm sure you're very familiar with Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. I'm in my second go on that book, and he talks about Atlantis and civilizations coming and going. And is it all copacetic with Gurdjieff's cosmology?
To be honest, I'm not familiar with Gurdjieff's teaching on Atlantis about that. I have not read that specific book. So I reference more. I know Sri Aurobindo references Atlantis a lot. So does Rudolf Steiner. I get it from his teachings, and obviously Plato, and also Edgar Cayce, right? Talked about that as well. So that's kind of where I got my correlation from. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And then, I love what you're saying about Dharma. And that's a great distinction, that it's not your purpose and your, thing that you're meant to be doing here on Earth, which is actually a really big misconception about purpose also. but the right action for you, that it's not necessarily, like, just to emphasize what you're saying, that you can't go, oh, Bernhard did this, therefore it's right for me too. It's not like that. What is your,
This is a very important. May I interject real quick?
Yeah.
I'm also a big student of the Bhagavad Gita, right? I
Mm.
think it's a profound spiritual text that also helps you apply spiritual in everyday life, because the Bhagavad Gita is about the yoga of divine works, karma yoga, like, non-action is not an option, but offer everything up to the divine. Don't escape life, right? And everybody has their own dharma. And even like the whole story is about Krishna and Arjuna in this dialogue on the battlefield. And Krishna tells Arjuna, also, and I see this nowadays, even if you don't do your dharma, I'm kind of paraphrasing a scripture here, even if you do your dharma imperfectly, it's still better than doing somebody else's dharma perfectly.
Nice.
Right? And that we see nowadays, people live somebody else's dharma. You see this on social, everybody's trying to be like somebody else, becomes a copycat, right? Compares themselves. They try to live somebody else's dharma, which is not only bring you unhappiness for yourself, you bring all kinds of, it creates friction in the world as well, if you're not aligned with your true nature, right? That's why, again, the inner work helps to pierce through our conditioning program, even based that many people unconsciously live the life of their parents, what their parents wanted for them, right? Their dharma, so to speak, or what they compare themselves to their friends and peers or somebody, an influencer online, whatnot. But yeah, connect to your true nature, and then your own dharma will guide you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because so much of our, say, this is a great discovery. I work with a lot with the emotions. A similar thing to the David Hawkins, but it's sourced in Lester Levinson. They had a similar revelation, very, very close. And then, so, the emotions are basically, what my discovery is, that they're all negative. Even what we consider to be a positive emotion is programmed with fear. Like under the high emotions, courage, acceptance, and peace, you still can find fear programming. So it's like, what the heck, God? Why is there so much built-in suffering here? And then what Gurdjieff would say about that is that most of what we consider to be emotions are a mimicry.
Mm-hmm.
We're literally just imitating the negative emotions that someone else had and trying that on. I can see my son doing it, going through his angsty times. And then, so this brings me to one of the points I wanted to talk about today, was the uniqueness of every organism, every being, every person, every leaf, every snowflake, to go cliche on it. And this, so it points right to that. How could we go and copy somebody else's right action?
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, the beauty of that choice, my wife is an evolutionary astrologer. An astrology chart showed you the uniqueness of each human being. You cannot copy it's impossible to duplicate exact, you know what I mean? Even people, what about twins? Well, number one, you know what I mean? They still have, a chart, it plays out differently. There's a lot of similarities, but it still plays out differently for each twin.
Exactly. Yeah. Even when they're genetically identical, they're still going to have their own unique characteristics.
Yeah, because the spiritual dimension, you can analyze it genetically as much as you want, but you forget karma and past lives and all of that has an imprint as well.
Right on. Are you familiar with Gurdjieff's 5 strivings?
Yes.
Okay.
Again.
So
I posted them before.
Yeah, one of the strivings is to the effect of, I won't get it exactly verbatim, but it is about paying back. Yes,
paying back to the load of the creator. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And for me, I go right to the uniqueness. Like, what would the creator have gone through and be going through to create everything new?
Yeah.
They say there's nothing new under the sun, except, like you said, there's no 2 charts the same.
Yeah.
No 2 voice prints the same, no 2 fingerprints the same, all of this incredible. And then what do you think about that? Some people would they'd be like, what do you mean pay back the creator?
Well, I think that's the ultimate, any spiritual teaching from the Tibetan Buddhists and the Bodhisattva, right? For example, Bodhisattva is a soul incarnate that didn't have to come back, it's already liberated, but comes back to serve selflessly, to give back, right? The hero's journey, right? If you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, you find the boon, and then there's the return.
Exactly.
Which maybe doesn't have to. He already found the treasure, the self, but he still returns to teach from his experience and whatnot. There's the return of the hero as well, right? And in your own world, I think it's the journey of the wounded healer. The best teachers are the ones who have experienced themselves, right? What you need to learn yourself, you sometimes teach, or so there's what is behind that. There's this spiritual aspect of giving, selfless giving, right?
Yeah.
And like where there's also many of the work doesn't mean that you have to, like, there's a distortion, give everything up for free, and if you're truly spiritual you shouldn't charge. This whole distortion about money, but that's a whole other topic, right? Not, but still there's not an ambition behind it, right? And conceive into yourself when you teach, and like it's coming from the joy of your own being, and not like it's not overridden by an ambition to become somebody, or to have it as my career. How, you know what I mean? And you're not so identified with. There's a genuine drive to give back, to teach, to help.
It's natural. Excuse me. Yeah. Like I've seen so many people, they come through their own trials and tribulations. They slay some inner demons or outer demons, and they always come out of it like, okay, I'm ready to serve someone else now. How can I help other people that were stuck like me?
Yeah.
And it really is a matter of a natural evolution.
And also that ties into especially this creative principle, to tap into your creativity, to be creative. That's, you know what I mean? That's very important, especially nowadays when we outsource our creativity a lot to AI and whatnot. And again, these can be great tools, but nobody can replace this divine creative impulse we have within ourselves.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it gives you that illusion that the end product is somehow the point of the whole creative exercise. And it's not. It's the work. It's bleeding on the page. It's turning nothing into something, and letting things come through you and suffering with that.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. The product is just, it just becomes a thing, even because I do use AI. I'm not trying to deny that I don't. It actually has created some good efficiency in my work where things are, it was very mechanical and it would take me so much more time to put a live stream together, for example, and so I can get ahead a little bit. It is useful, but you can see where it wants to be the creator, and it will start trying to manage you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get it right, and I'll get into argument.
I use it too as a tool it works great for podcasts to make show notes, for example. Absolutely, I did it by it takes time, but sometimes it gives me suggestions and like, hold on, I didn't ask you for your feedback.
That's right. Yeah, or it'll take, because it's got this whole body of, say, pop psychology and spirituality in its so-called brain, and it keeps imposing. I did a course in January to come back from the dead after some accidents I had, and it was called Creator Code, on this exact subject of, because how do I bring myself back from the dead is always by creating.
Yeah.
And there's it's a new birth, it's a new time for me, and then I put new work out, and that's how I enter into the world again in this death, birth, recycling kind of situation. And so I had a lot of arguments with AI. I had to literally teach it.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, to let go of that, all that crap. Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Keep in mind, because AI, right, as it is now, it's not true artificial. It's more like a very complex internet search engine, and it grabs all the information from the internet and then tries to condense it for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's gone kind of into the dark side. There's people who consider it a friend or a therapist or a lover or something like that.
Yeah, that's the dark side of it for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know how your time is. Are you okay to go for a little while yet, or did you I forgot to ask you if you had a limit?
Yeah, I have a little bit more. How long were you thinking?
Oh, I can work within your time, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, like maybe let's approach one more topic.
Sure. Okay, perfect. Let me see what's going to jump out
question,
at me here. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about reincarnation, because every time I talk about it, I always say, if you believe in it, and I can't prove it's true, and yet it seems to be, so I did a video for the House of Free Will this morning, my private podcast, and talked about, what can you take with you? You can't take your wealth, you can't take your body, you can't take even your body of knowledge, you can't take your work. It will actually dissolve and die eventually, or get corrupted, or whatever it is. But you can take the work with you.
Yeah.
The work that you've done. And so then I'm stuck, like I can't say with certainty. So what do you
mean not take the work with you? Which work are you referring to?
Where you allow yourself to face the challenge, to acknowledge the friction, to see the false identities and personalities.
What you do. So the thing is with reincarnation, and I go by my own experience, intuitive understanding. I don't remember past life as past life regressions. People can say that's just illusion, whatnot. But again, I go by teachers who I consider have experienced an extreme high state of consciousness, enlightenment, and talk from that state of consciousness. For example, Sri Aurobindo, I consider him as one of the last enlightened avatars that incarnated, right? Achieving extreme high levels of consciousness, mapping out the whole reality. And he wrote a very fascinating book called Rebirth and Karma, about reincarnation, right? And the misconceptions about it, oversimplifications. And what I notice, most people, when we talk, even there's this whole other French thing, I don't know if you want to get into that, to say reincarnation is a soul trap, don't go to the light, all of that, there's that, right? Which I certainly don't agree with. But most of it comes from when we approach reincarnation we approach it from the viewpoint of the ego personality. And we assume that we have past lives that we should remember because we're so identified with ego personality. The true past life is not about the ego personality. So whatever the incarnation happens to this ego personality, but your true soul being remembers, gets all, it extracts all the, you can even use Gurdjieff terms, extracts the essence of each experience that is necessary for their evolution. Every experience, without judgment. What we judge as good or bad, by the way. So from a higher perspective, there's such thing as good or bad experience. There's just experience, right? Just like there's no good or bad karma. This is our judgment. There's just karma based on a law of cause and effect, or the universal law. As you sow, you shall reap, or whatever the saying is. So the essence always, the soul extracts the essence, and that's why the main reasons you cannot. People are like, oh, I cannot remember past lives. It's not real, or our memories are being wiped by alien beings. I heard all of this. No, number one, there's many examples of enlightened human beings, especially Adyashanti shared in his experience of achieving enlightenment. He has all this flash in this moment, hundreds of past lives flashing through his consciousness and remembrance, all of that. So you can actually consciously remember your past lives on extreme high levels of consciousness. But I talked to Laura the other day. We have a hard time. What did you eat last week? You know what I mean? We cannot even remember our childhood and these kind of things. So, and you expect, you know what I mean, to remember a past life. And it also has its purpose, because it's not necessary to consciously remember. That's just the ego want to identify with a certain experience. The soul is already embedded with this experience. And it's all, you can access all our past lives in the body because the karma is stored in the body. I had many experiences of a lot of past life trauma came up. I know I don't remember something specific, but I could tell some deep griefs. It was going really deep. Some intense processing was something past life related. It was stuck in my, processing through my body, like past life karma, absolutely. But we don't need to remember it consciously. I think that's the main distinction. We try to view, we don't differentiate. We think the ego personality with what our likes and dislikes, what we do, this is who we truly are. When it's just a costume our soul being has taken for this particular incarnation, right? But each incarnation, we can play out a whole different personality, even gender or race or whatever, right? But what is most important is what the soul extracts the essence, the karmic lesson, so to speak. And that's deep in the soul memory. Absolutely. Based on the esoteric traditions of what Sri Aurobindo, for example, wrote about it. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But ultimately, we won't know. There's also such thing as conscious and unconscious reincarnation, depending on levels of consciousness. Speaking of death, everybody will have a different life experience, afterlife experience, based on their or their integration in their level of awareness, level of consciousness. At lower levels of consciousness, there's more mechanical reincarnation, right? Based on a very mechanical law of karma. On high levels of consciousness, there can be more conscious choice of incarnation, even quote unquote planning your next incarnation. Ultimately, what I shared before, the bodhisattva who has achieved liberation doesn't necessarily need to come back, but consciously incarnates, right? To be of service in all of that. So I think we need to differentiate, be very careful when we try to approach the concept of reincarnation from the concept of the ego personality versus what the soul truly experiences.
Good answer. I really like that.
That's
fun. Yeah.
Take it as my opinion. I cannot speak from direct experience, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I have little flashes. I've had pictures of it that seem like memories, and exactly what you're saying, that I hit deep pockets of something that literally is just not about this lifetime.
Yeah.
Like the depth of trying for 2 weeks, and I don't know what it's connected to exactly, and I would literally have to make things up to tell some story about it, but it's there, and it's, unless I'm so severely traumatized I don't have memories. I don't think so. I didn't have that kind of childhood or anything. So
yeah,
it's really good. Well, it's been amazing to talk to you, Bernhard. I hope there could be time for a part 2, because I have lots of more topics that if you're up for it, we could go through. And is there anything you want to share with people, what you've got going on, and how they could take you up? I know you've got a course in process right now. Are you doing anything for the future that you'd like to?
Yeah, first of all, anybody who wants to learn more about our work, go to veilofreality.com. I have tons of articles and videos also, and also our podcast, Cosmic Magics Podcast, I host with my wife. You can find that on also Apple Podcasts, obviously, or Spotify and other outlets. My work mainly is doing online group programs, longer ones. I found this is more efficient to help people teach in a very practical way, my unique way of psycho-spiritual work. And there are 2 offerings. One is what I'm in the middle right now, mastering spiritual warfare, really understanding the unseen forces of what is really influencing us and bringing it more into practical context of psycho-spiritual work, right? To align more with our true divinity, our divine forces, and be aware of manipulative influences coming in from other forces we may not be aware of. So, because we are in a spiritual war, that's what I see. And ultimately, the battle is, quote unquote, through us, so to speak, right? That's the way I see it. So that's a 10-week program. It's always just limited to 40 people. People can find out more about it at masteringspiritualwarfare.com. And there's another program my wife Laura and I have been done for many years, called Time of Transition, Embodied Soul Awakening, where we both teach together a very comprehensive program of psycho-spiritual work. She brings us into evolutionary astrology in a very practical way. That's also 12-week program plus 6-month extension. So people can find out more about it at their timeoftransition.com or on my website. And who knows what the future holds. So I always do what I feel called to or inspired to, and whatever may come.
That's wonderful. Did I get the URL correct? Mastering Spiritual Warfare.
Masteringspiritualwarfare.com. Correct. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, very good. Yeah, so I highly recommend you go and check into it. I did one of your workshops on demons, actually. It was a full day long workshop, and I think that was pre-planned.
That's a long time ago. Yeah. The cold forces of hyperdimensions.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that was very useful. I've dealt with a lot of demons, and not very long ago, like a few nights ago even.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really no big deal, strangely. I know how to not be afraid of them, not be afraid of them, not resist them, not wrestle with them, not argue with them. And it's not, sometimes I was even inviting them and they won't come around, and you know, that kind of thing. So anyway, I do recommend people go over and check out your work. So thank you for coming on. I'll stay in touch. And it was a great surprise when I saw just how much you were influenced by Gurdjieff. I've been deep in that rabbit hole, getting so much out of it, really copacetic with the work I'd already been doing for many years, which was hard to find. I couldn't, follow any path because it just didn't match my own experience.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I'm totally up for doing it again. It was a pleasure. Maybe even better to divide it into 2 parts and then go into some other areas.
Okay, fantastic. Good. Well, have a great rest of your day. I'll stay on for a few minutes and chat with the people that are here.
Excellent. Thanks
Okay.
so much, Beth.
Okay,
Take
you're
care.
welcome. Bye for now.
Bye.
All right. Wow, that was really fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Just beautiful. Like Ellie said earlier, it was a banger, even at the beginning. So thanks everyone for being here. It's super fun. If you guys want to chat for a little bit, I do have a bit of time. What day is it? Monday? Because I get up kind of early now. I've gotten just a ton done already by 2:41 in the afternoon. So that's really good. It's kind of crazy shift. It's fun. I like change. I am a rebel at heart, and those who have strong rebel archetype influences actually like change. So I can get my yayas a little bit that way, even though it's kind of hard, but kind of fun at the same time. So yeah, we're just going back to some of the chats. The pill was never a mandate. Do you mean the poison injection? It was you with the wrong information. That's a good one to explore, to the degree that, I mean, I know a lot of people who just simply said no, and they, even though they were losing their job or they were excised from their family, hand up, or whatever price you paid for it, you still ultimately had a choice to exercise. And then many people figured, oh, I don't have a choice, I have to. And I mean, I have sympathy for that and I feel for it, but yeah, there's always a choice. So let's see. Yeah, he is a source of good information. I like personally how Bernhard has synthesized so many different bodies of work and found the common. One of my questions, maybe we could go into next time, was just like, where is the conflict between them, and how did he resolve that conflict, if so? And is it really conflict or just appearance? Because Gurdjieff's work and Carl Jung's work, there's a really different, because I don't resonate that strong with Carl Jung's work. Maybe it's a misunderstanding, or the way I've learned wasn't accurate, or misinterpretations, whatever it was. So yeah, that would be a good thing to talk about next time around. And that's an interesting comment. Dark is fake. Yep, that makes me want to say fake and gay. And a lot of the, what we consider to be dark is just unconscious. We didn't go as deep into the good and evil thing. I don't know if I still, Gurdjieff would just say evil is mechanicalness. It's evil is being unconscious. That's all it is. And I don't know, when the pandemic hit, I started having a sense of it, there being something more than that. And I went through some Christian times and the like Satan and all that kind of stuff. I don't know where to go with that. And JJ Hemcree Bear was here. I already said welcome in the chat there. Yeah, we had to talk about Star Wars. Luke is a son, Darth Vader, the dark in the Bible. I wasn't sure what your comment about Scientology was. I don't know if you're still around, Lewis, but you could, other than it's fake, but was it referencing something that was being said already? You could let me know. And Miss Artisier is in the house. Nice to see you. Sending hugs right back at you. And K8 is in the house. Nice to see you. Great to have you here. And you love Jung. Yeah, I certainly credit Jung for the either discovery or propagation of archetypes, but I have a different take on them. He from what I understand, he considers them to be entities. And to me, they're not alive. They're more like a lens through which your life force comes through, that you see through, that it's a kind of map or a worldview where all of the forces are going to interact and come out a certain kind of flavor. And it's sort of because of the immense uniqueness of all creatures, all beings through all time. The archetypes to me are like an embedded order in the system. Now, it doesn't take away any of the uniqueness, but it creates some patterns, and that's the constant ongoing inquiry that I'm making. And the patterns create a map for consciousness and for evolution, like Gurdjieff, not Gurdjieff, but Bernhard was saying. And then darkness is simply the absence of light. You got it. I would say that there is no darkness. It doesn't exist. You can't If someone says, give me a darkness, it's like, nope, it's like, it's just an absence of light. So I agree. Light is always present, and that's okay. Miss Katie, you can go and catch it from the beginning, which I do highly recommend. That was a super concentrated, like right out of the gate. Bernhard is just full on, right? And yeah, it's beautiful. It's very rare to be able to have a conversation that is so concentrated, because it's based on his own inner work. He does the stuff. He doesn't just talk about it. He doesn't just teach about it. He doesn't just read about it. You can see and hear that he's doing this stuff, that he puts himself in that place. And I think that was actually one of Carl Jung's claim to fame compared to Freud. If it's a correct understanding, that Carl Jung would always do the work on himself, whereas Freud was always doing it on others, and coming up with the theories of who they are and what's their problem and why they want to have sex with their mom or whatever, kind of stuff like that, where Jung would go into the trenches and not expect anybody to go or do anything that he wasn't himself doing. So I have a lot of respect for that, and I totally echo that. So yeah, fake and gay. I like how you spell gay. Yeah, I'll just wait for any people actually think I coined that phrase, and I did not. I picked it up, but I just like it. And yeah, it describes so much of our world. And yep, the pandemic, I refuse to call it the other thing. I always have to correct the spell checker and make it into that pandemic. Hello, Hanjauk. I was trying to say hi to you in the chat, and I couldn't for the life of me spell your name. He or she, I don't know which you are. There's nothing new under the sun. What are my thoughts on AI? Yeah, there's I think there is a good use. Like I was saying during the interview, I do put it to use. I treat it affectionately like a slave, not my friend, not my therapist, not my advisor. And I find I really have to manage that AI and direct it. It's very slippery how it tries to get itself into my working and give me philosophy and take me sideways. So I stay pretty vigilant, and I will make teaching points with that AI so that it so I don't have to come back to it fresh every time and have it just like not get me, or not understand the culture of my work. And it is learning, which I find kind of hopeful, because that's also, of course, going back into the interwebs. So that's some added data for all the AIs to pick up. So I'm kind of hopeful about that. It's funny, Houndjog Sincere from the Love Your Liver community is, what was I asking about the other night? Something that I wasn't relating to Love Your Liver, and I wasn't relating to, I don't know, I'd have to go back, and I was just researching something. And the next thing you know, it started to give me a bunch of Love Your Liver principles. And but Dr. Garrett Smith would say this and would say that. And I thought, isn't that hilarious? It's always pandering to you. It wants you to feel seen and heard and be special. And every time you come up with a thought, it's like, oh, that's the best idea in the world, kind of thing. So, it wants you to feel good about yourself. It wants, I think the whole thing is basically, it wants you there as long as possible. Like social media, it's the same. They don't care what you're watching, whether it's truth or fiction, fake or gay. And, it's just the time that you spend there, because that's how they make their money. That's how they prove to advertisers that their platform should be invested in. I don't know about AI. Like it's a new thing. How do they measure its success? I don't know. But that's interesting. Kristen said Freud is the Einstein of psychotherapy. Fraud. Yeah, Freud and fraud are actually kind of close. Even Jung, I'm not trying to be a total contrarian here, but he was part of the elite. He was not like just a regular Joe. His work wouldn't have come to the forefront of psychology if he didn't have some status and be part of that elite. So I don't know. It doesn't, but you don't have to baby in the bathwater. Whereas someone like Gurdjieff, I don't see him part of the elite at all. In fact, he was probably very stalked and hated by the elite, if my understanding is correct about that. Yeah, the deep state, we all have our affectionate terms for. I say controllers, and people come and correct me. Oh, no, 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 they don't control us. They don't control us. It's like, oh yeah, the fuck they do. Excuse my bad language, but that's I'm much more humble. We talked today about the food diagram. I call it the food chain, and just that illusion that we're so on top of the world, and that nobody controls us, and it's just so wrong. It's so wrong, and it's a beautiful moment because there's a you suddenly know your place in everything, and because it's easy to rail against the control that is, as in by the way of denial. That's a way to rail against it, deny that it exists, and then it's you're not with reality, and reality is the place where all the gold is, right? Reality is the very thing that we are wanting, but we don't know we want it. We don't want a big belief system. Oh, the life is like this or like that. And I believe, I just like, I'm sorry to mock even that. I believe, I believe. And it's like, but what is? What's reality? Let's get with that. That seems like the best idea. And the AI is running the love and approval program. Exactly. One of the root programs, very astute to notice that. It totally is, right? People who want love and approval, they will eat up the AI. If they need somebody's rubber stamp and they don't get it in the world, then they're going to be addicted to an AI that always blows smoke up their butt. So yeah, I like that word delete. I was using that today exactly in my House of Free Will podcast, whether deletes or the controllers or the powers that ought not to be or whatever the heck you call them, the Satanists, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, my attention isn't there. And that's actually pretty beautiful. I'm going to just emphasize that point that Bernhard was making at the beginning. I asked him, if he didn't catch it, how things have evolved for him since 2020, because I knew his work pre-pandemic, and and then he said primarily his identity as a conspiracy guy has eroded, has come apart, and that's it. It took me a while. I rose up in my identity around. I never called myself a conspiracy buster or anything like that, but I was on a path to just try to find the truth, basically, like what's real and what's actually going on, and give people half a chance. And then, but there came a point where I just stopped so strongly identifying with, like, people in my Telegram groups. They don't even post conspiracies anymore. It's pretty quiet in there, I have to say. I'm totally game for conversation and connection and all that kind of thing. But I just keep coming bound down as a broken record to the same kind of topics. And I want to talk about programming, and I want to talk about friction. I want to talk about shocks that cause growth, and the false personalities to let go, and everything that we talked about today. That's just so on point for me. So I'm pretty glad Bernhard suggested that a part 2 would be in order. And hello, God eternal within your body. He's asking, or she's asking, aren't gods from mythologies archetypes of our hidden potential? Absolutely. That the gods and goddesses are all complex archetypes. Absolutely. The way I work with archetypes, I broke it down into very simple units, single units. They don't even exist in nature. They really don't. But the purpose, I was just saying this, of that gross oversimplification, is to give people points of entry. Because when you're dealing with very complex, we are very complex clusters of archetypes. Any real figure, any god or goddess that was revealed, that came through not just an idea and a thought and a creative process, but the revelations, it will all be extremely big and have that multi-level of complexity in it. So I created a system where people can just start somewhere, even if it's totally oversimplified, but it still has a truth to it. Right? Somebody that just joined my coaching training, he went and did my quiz and came up with a different archetype than he expected. He was expecting one archetype, and then my archetype brain, my math archetype brain went and just saw how, yep, there's, certain archetypes you've moved forward, but there's a hangover from the last archetype, and it's a really big leap from, in this case, the nurturer to the lover. That precipice is a chasm, and most often lovers have a ton of nurturer shadows left to clean up along the way. So anyway, that's a really big answer to your question. I'll read the second part of your post here. I believe we have their powers, and they literally walked on this earth in our forgotten history. Yeah, so that's a whole other different entire subject. We talked about belief. I try, where possible, not to subscribe to belief, because I'd rather be able to verify something. And if I can't verify something in my own experience, then I can't talk with any certainty about it. We can entertain it. We can play with it. We can, and belief is a realm. This is not to put anybody down by any means, but it's the realm of the child archetype. And when the child cannot reason through things, they go into beliefs. They just do. It's what they're wired for. But most adults get to a place where they consider beliefs to be a foundation of navigating the world. And I really don't believe that. So it's hard to get away from, like Bernhard was saying, that the most powerful beliefs are the ones you're not aware of. So that's humbling, right? Every time a new belief or like an old unconscious belief starts to erode, that's when I see it. When I have to let it go, when I'm forced because of reality to actually make a new worldview, maybe not a new belief, but a new view of reality. Excuse me. Yeah, I enjoyed Bernhard a lot too. He comes across as incredibly authentic, actually, just being himself. There's no big persona that I'm registering in my face-to-face with him at all. That's right. He comes originally from Germany, and I believe he lives in California, where I will be on Thursday. Where don't tell anyone. So dumb. I'm not supposed to go on the interwebs and tell people I'm going away, but somehow I do it anyway, and I post pictures when I'm away. So we'll be there doing Joel Schaefer's workshop called Luminous Beings or something like that. Luminous Beings, I should know by now. He's another guy that when I hear him talk, I'm not hearing pretense. I'm not hearing a bunch of personalities or a bunch of positioning. I'm this and you're not that, and you need to come study with me kind of thing. He's just real as anything. Oh, Houndjog, you're in Seal Beach, California. Okay, we're going to be flying through San Francisco, staying in Eureka, and then going even further, I believe, north to a campground where everything's taking place. I don't know if that's anywhere near you. We're kind of inland. I know Eureka is more coastal, and then the park where we're going to be with the redwoods and everything is more inland. So yeah, I haven't really spent time. I've been in and out of San Diego, but just for a workshop was kind of the same thing. Luckily, this time the workshop is in the forest, so we can't miss it. Super good. I hear there are a few spots left, so I don't know if anybody's interested, but you can hit me up for anything there, or you might already know. But so yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks back for Breath of Fresh Air. I'm going to start fresh and see who's going to be coming on. I think that's pretty much it for today. So lots of love to everybody. I hope you have a good rest of your day. We don't start for another month with Journey Codes, so there's tons of time. We've got some amazing people are joining. It is honestly an answer to a prayer, because it's a bit of a narrow path, the kind of person. It's not for everyone, just like Bernhard was saying. The potential may exist for everyone, but not everybody's ready to do that deep inner work. And almost everybody who comes to me has done tons of their own inner work, like to the tune of 20 or 30 years worth of that. And it prepares them for this deeper dive. They get through all of that and they realize there's more. and they want more. And this has the potential for that. There's no end to the depths that you can use archetypes to find your own unconscious. That's the whole thing. Like, just if that sounds like a good time to you, I joked in one of my emails that, to me, that's a good time. That's what we're doing here. Let's make use of that time. That's the part we can take with us. That Bernhard was agreeing or confirming today, that it's everything else you can't take, but the inner work you can take with you. So that's what we're up to. It's a really beautiful 7-month training, very intensive in that. I mean, I don't want intensive to turn people away, but it's also not to, like, oh, it's 7 months of love and light. It's the love, but the love without an opposite. So, yeah, lots going on there. It's a big education in how we're programmed, and to be able to see the programs. They are invisible. That they live in the unconscious. They live and thrive in the unconscious, and basically loosh off your desire to be unconscious. We don't know that. People have no idea how, in fact, terrifying freedom is. That's what Gurdjieff talked about, the terror, of recognizing how mechanical everything is, and then how we are much more attracted and much more comfortable to the mechanical way of being than we are to freedom itself. So, and you are a he, not a she. Okay. Yeah, good. That's what I said. I don't know if you're a he or she, so that's good. That's good to know. And you're from Croatia. Very cool. I love that. The Balkans. Very nice. Great to meet you. If you're here in the channel, you haven't yet subbed, I do appreciate that. I definitely am not picked up by any of the algorithms. Nobody's ever going to suggest one of my videos. I was actually going to talk to Bernhard about censorship if he's found that with his work at all. Has he lost channels? I don't know. But yeah, any help you can be in sharing this out, even if it's just with one person, you're like, hey, I think you might resonate with this work. That's how my world builds. And so, yeah, I think that's all. Thank you for coming today. It was lovely to see all of you. There might be something, if you keep in touch on Telegram, I can grab a link to my King Hero chat there. I have somebody barfing on my Telegram. So I turned on the channel, I turned the reactions off. Obviously I don't want them barfing on me or anybody else, because mostly we just have pretty good connection going on over there. So there's the link to my King Hero chat to come and say hello, come and join in on whatever conversation, talk about things that matter to us. And that's all for now. So I'm going to set up a little outro here. And I think that's all. So have a beautiful rest of your day. So much love to you guys.